All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Georgia. Okay, a team that has underrated, brutal schedule. Um, but this is the most talented team in the country, right? I mean, it is. They're coming off kind of a heartbreaking loss in the SEC championship. In my opinion, they were probably the first or second best team in the country. Would have loved to see this Georgia team play against Michigan. I think Michigan maybe still have won, but I don't know, dude. I think Alabama just kind of outplayed them that day on that particular Saturday. So I'm like, it'd be interesting to see this team kind of coming out with a vengeance, and they're still talented. They landed some guys in the portal that are really talented. Sure, they lost offensively, like Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, and an offensive lineman as well. But man, is this team still so talented, or what? Especially, well, I would say, especially on the offense side of the ball, but really on both sides of the ball, right? I'll go through the offense real quickly. I mean, you got Carson Beck at quarterback, okay? At running back, you got Trevor Etienne, you got Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson, who we made a video about a little while back, who's fantastic. Chauncey Bowens, Cash Jones, I mean, just more talented guys. In the receiving room, you had Dominic Lovett, who disappointed a little bit last year, but I think he'll have a larger role to fill this year. You bring in Colby Young from Miami, who's a big body receiver there. Arian Smith, you still have. You bring in guys like London Humphreys, Michael Jackson. This wide receiver group is talented, and let's not forget about the tight ends. These people are going to be like, "Oh, they lost Brock Bowers," right? They still have Oscar Delp, who is a fantastic tight end, by the way, and Benjamin Urasek, who was a fantastic tight end for Stanford. So in the aggregate, could they have as much production as Brock Bowers did? Possibly. Possibly in the aggregate. This offense is loaded, and the offensive line is still really good. I mean, it is a loaded offense, and Carson Beck is set up for some serious success this year.
Yeah, to me, you mentioned all those names, and I love them, and I love the depth and in every single position group, even in the offensive line. Holy cow. You're talking about multiple quarterbacks, even Jaden Rashada, just a guy with, starting experience, former high recruit, Gunnar Stockton, former high recruit, Ryan Puglisi, crazy talented freshman. You mentioned that the embarrassment of riches, that is that running back room, wide receiver. To me, the only thing, if I had to nitpick, and we're grading Georgia on a different curve than we grade the rest of college football, the rest of most of college football, right? Like these tier one teams, you just grade them differently. The only thing I can nitpick here is game changing alpha players on this offense. To me, Brock Bowers was that dude. You saw what he did against Auburn last year in Auburn. That kind of player is a special player in college football to have. I don't know if I see it on this offense. Carson Beck might be that dude, but he can't do it himself. Also, obviously, Ladd McConkey is also that dude, right?
But
When
let me
he is
ask you
healthy.
this. Let me ask you this though. Did either of them play 12 or 13 games last year? I
But
said
my
Georgia
point
played
is
14 games.
those guys weren't really healthy in that Bama game. To a healthy Bowers and a healthy McConkey, I think you could have seen a different. But those type of players, those margins are the difference between losing an SEC championship game and missing out or winning the national title, which they could have obviously done, like you said, them against Michigan. So I don't know, man. I'm with you here, and that is the most talented team in the country. Offensively, I see zero holes. And London Humphrey, I mean, he is a crazy athlete. I'm not expecting him to be, an elite wide receiver in the SEC this year, right? I think
The
I
ceiling is
think,
for later.
yes, exactly. And Colby Young too, really, really good potential as well. And he's had production in ACC, had a good spring.
Did I even say Robert Thomas, by the way?
Yeah, from Mississippi State. But I still don't see like that dude that could be the margin when we're talking about. I don't care. Georgia doesn't care. They don't need those guys for Kentucky and Mississippi State and even like Georgia Tech, probably Florida as well. Like good solid teams, probably even Clemson as well, a team with a high win total. But if you want to win multiple games in the playoffs, you're going to have those elite players And I don't know if I see one yet. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't see one yet. We'll see what happens though. And by the way, if you're in the comments, Georgia fans, let us know. Like, if call your shot, let us know. Hey, this dude here, you're missing on Eurosec. Arian Smith's the fastest player in the field. Colby Young is a star. Lovett is better than Luther Burden. Whatever you want to be, right? Then let us know in the comments, and we'd love to hear from you.
So let's talk about the offensive line briefly because it's just good, right? There's no other. I'm not going to put any other adjectives other than it's just good. Tate Rowledge, very good football player. Jared Wilson is good. Dylan Fairchild, I like a lot. I mean, Ernest Green, Xavier Truss. I mean, like all of these guys. And the depth, too. Micah Morris, Monroe Freeling as a true sophomore. I mean, an embarrassment of riches over here on the offensive line.
Is
Drew
there going to
Bobo. Is
be?
that Mike Bobo's kid?
I hope so. I hope
I
so.
I don't know if it is, but man, that would be pretty awesome because I didn't know that. And maybe just by looking at this depth chart, that becomes something that I don't know. Georgia fans in the comments are probably going to know the answer to that question. So I hope they're commenting and letting us know.
Yeah. By the
That,
way, it is. It is.
oh, that's
It's his
awesome.
son.
That
Yeah.
the coach's kid.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
this
dude,
is
not to
back
mention
when
the true
it,
freshman too. Like, not that those tackles are really going to play, but they're huge. They're huge.
it it's gonna make like Carson Beck, and we love Carson Beck. You love Carson Beck. I love Carson Beck.
Before everyone else
His
did.
Yep, Matthew was on him. His ease of play, I will say, if that makes sense, is going to be probably one of the easiest in the SEC. Is that crazy to say? In terms of you're
No,
looking at the
not the
talent level at
schedule,
the wide
but
receiver,
yes, the
the
players
ease
around
of
them.
you have a veteran offensive line with 5+ guys you feel really good about, right? You have 2 to 3, even Lawson Lucky too played really good last year. You have 3 tight ends that you feel really good about. You have 5 to 6 to 7 receivers. You've got 3 to 4 running backs, right? I mean, it's freaking Noah's Ark on steroids, right? You are not lacking for depth at all.
Well, enough of the offense. Let's talk about the defense. Let's just get into it. Can I just say also good, like great, even like at every spot? I mean, really, there's not like, can you find a hole on this team? Like, there is no hole on this team.
The only thing I will say is interior defensive line. Nazir Stackhouse is a darn good player, right? But and again, we're grading Georgia on a different curve.
Yep.
How much does Christian Miller, Warren Brinson, how much do they step up? Does Jordan Hall in year 2, former big time recruiting win for them, does he make that jump in year 2, right? Like, I'm sorry, I said Miller and Brinson. Those guys aren't, I don't think, in year 2, but I was talking about Jordan Hill going into year 2, right? Can these guys be productive alongside Stackhouse and make Stackhouse's allow him to be disruptive, not just dealing with double teams all the time? Allow your edge guys like Michael Williams, right? Those guys to really, really feast. I don't know. I think you're missing Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Those guys were a little bit missed last year at times. And I don't know. I like it. Another year older, right? I like that they didn't really take any transfers. That tells you, and they could have, right? That tells you exactly how they feel about those guys, and you got to feel pretty good if you're a Georgia fan. But we will see. That'd be my question, especially in that D line.
I mean, you lose, you get back your top 1, 2, 3 top sack getters from last year. The only one you lose is Jamon Dumas Johnson. That's your number 4 sack getter last year, and you don't care.
Dude, he was beat out, and he's going to be really good for Kentucky.
He will.
He
Absolutely.
was going to be linebacker 5, dare I say? I mean, holy cow!
Yeah. So
Again,
I'm
embarrassment of riches.
embarrassment of riches in that defensive front. Let's talk about the secondary, I guess. You lose a guy like Kamari Lasser. How much is that? I mean, he was a really good football player, right? He was a really good football
Yeah,
player.
him and
But they,
Tyke Smith were really, really good for a
yes,
couple years now.
correct. Both of them were drafted, I believe, 4th round and up. Kamar
I
Lasser's
think both
third
were.
round, maybe. Tyke Smith was
I think.
89th to the Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, they were
Or was
day two.
Lasser? I think they're day two. Hmm. Anyways, uh, Malachi Starks, Dalen Everett, Dan Jackson, Julian Humphrey. There's a lot of names in this secondary that are really good. And here's the thing: you lost some depth to the transfer portal as well, but it still feels like they're pretty solid there, right?
Yeah, and you kind of replace those. I mean, some young guys I'm looking at. You mentioned those guys. Those guys are all studs, right? I mean, I feel pretty good about those guys. Humphrey was a guy that almost entered the portal. You talk about portal exits. He entered, right? And eventually he withdrew. I think Georgia was like, come back here, come back here. We need you this year, and he's gonna
Yeah.
make a ton of money
Yep.
in
AJ
the
Harris is
NFL.
gone though.
Yep, Harris gone. But I look at a couple young guys. I mean, Ellis Robinson, he's a guy that has been talked up for a while now, coming out of IMG as a super, super ready-made cornerback for the SEC. How much is he gonna have to play? He shouldn't have to start, right? Because of Everett and Humphrey. But like I said, like he's gonna have to play at some point, and they like to rotate their guys. They like flexibility. I kind of like that he can have a big impact on his team. And then you also have Jake Pope, who I talked about in Alabama's video, leaving them. He's a guy that really flashed in that spring game a year ago. I I I love his game. Him and then KJ Bolden, the 5-star freshman, finally got a kid, I think, from Buford, right? Finally. And
Yeah.
he's a stud.
Here's a quote from Kirby Smart. This is gonna be paraphrased. It's not exactly a quote, but he said during SEC media days that he believes that KJ Bolden is in the same spot, if not surpassed, where Malachi Starks was as a true freshman.
Jeez, man.
Isn't that nuts? And then embarrassment of riches this team has. Embarrassment. It's just a
Yeah,
good football team, man.
and to
I mean,
me,
no
like
one, no, everyone knew that. Right? Obviously, everyone knew that. I'm not this breaking news. Georgia football is good this year.
really good. No, yeah, I think the what's crazy, we haven't got to it. Their linebacking room might be their best room on their roster. I don't think that's crazy at all to say you've got a guy like Smale Munden, right? Chaz Chambliss, Jalen Walker, CJ Allen. That staff is super high on. He's a guy, 5-star, that's going to force his way on the field.
Justin
Raylan
Williams is
Wilson
just
as
sitting
well.
there as a true freshman.
Justin Wilson, Chris
Just
Cole,
Williams.
sorry, Williams, Damon Wilson, Chris Cole, Chris Jones, Quintavious Johnson. What's the common denominator? All high recruits, and they love them all. I mean, holy cow. I mean, you've got depth on depth on depth. Not worried about this position in the near or long term future, but you've got real difference makers in Munden, Chambliss. You don't say that often about linebackers, right? It's hard to do in college football in today's game. But those two, CJ Allen, those guys can be real difference makers for, this team in 2024.
So let's talk about. We talked enough about their defense, right? Let's talk about their schedule, right? Their over and win totals at 9.5, or sorry, 10.5. Was at 9.5? That would be a problem because I would be unloading my bank account. Um,
It's gonna sit there. I was like, I can't pay rent, but you're just give me. It's like a bail bond. It's like I'll
yeah.
pay it back. I'll pay it back. It's gonna
Or
cash. Don't
or here's
worry.
how you pay rent. You just like instead of giving them like whatever you pay for it, say you pay $500 in rent, instead of giving them like a $500, you give them a $250 ticket for Georgia to win the national championship, or let them reap those benefits there. So,
Exactly.
anyways, it's collateral, right? So their schedule, they open with Clemson in Atlanta, I believe, then Tennessee Tech at home, Kentucky in the road, get a bye at Alabama, Auburn at home, Mississippi State at home, at Texas, bye week, Florida in Jacksonville, at Ole Miss, Tennessee at home, UMass at home, Georgia Tech at home. Or yeah, or Georgia Tech's at home, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this schedule dynamic is actually pretty brutal because some of their toughest games they have on the road or at a neutral site, right? You're looking at Clemson as a neutral site. Alabama's on the road, Texas is on the road, Ole Miss is on the road, right? And then to boot, you still play Tennessee, and uh, I still think Florida can give teams problems. I don't think Georgia will struggle with them, especially at home. But I don't know. I see 5 games on the schedule that are potential slip up games, right? And we haven't seen. I mean, when was the last time Georgia, like under Kirby Smart, at least in this, if you want to call it the dynasty like run that they've had in the last 3 years, we've never seen them slip up in a game where they shouldn't have, right? The Bama game was like they've only lost to Bama twice in the last 3 years. Those are the only teams that they've lost to.
Yeah, and also, when's the last time they've had one or multiple marquee regular season games, right? I mean, you're looking at Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas. Those are all teams that are going to be fighting for the SEC championship game. Yes, Georgia is probably going to make the playoffs no matter what happens in those games. I'm feeling like they're going to win at least one of those games, probably more. But it's kind of fun. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of new territory. I think they'll be pretty battle tested, but also this team is deep, man. This team is deep to go on a run in November and December and January, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the over 10.5. It's juiced to the over, right? I wanted to find a way to take the under, right? I'm like, just to be that guy, but that's not happening, right? Like I can't see them losing 2 games. Like the schedule for 99% of the teams in the country, right? It's at least 2 losses, right? But it's just not with this Georgia team. It's just not.
A
So I
hungry
mean,
Georgia team, an elite staff Georgia team.
like, and not like I'm high in Alabama, right? But like a new coaching staff, right? You have over there Texas's first year in the SEC, and I believe they have to play Michigan first. So it's like, what's Texas's depth going to look like? Come October 19th. Ole Miss late in the season. Like, yes, we love Ole Miss's team right now, but is depth in some areas an issue? Like, what's that going to look like in November? Right? Depth is not an issue for Georgia at all at any position. So I'm gonna
Uh,
take the over 10.5.
I'm with you here. I'm going over, like you said. It's just there's not really a way to take the under. Now, if you told me Clemson has been using the transfer portal the past couple seasons, this is absolutely a different conversation, right? But it's crazy how slept on that game is. Clemson is probably going to be what, top 15 team, top 20
They're
team.
Georgia are right now double-digit favorites in that game. I
Yeah,
think
and
it's 13 and a
nope,
half.
nobody's even excited for it. It's in Atlanta. It's basically a home game. Um, and we saw what happened. I guess a couple years ago, it was a really close game, right? Yeah, that pick six to win it for Georgia. But then, we saw a couple years ago Oregon just get mopped, a good Oregon team. So I don't know. I feel pretty darn good about Georgia this year, as does everyone else. It's probably about the dumbest statement ever, but I'll take the over here. You mentioned those road games. I love it. I love it. And if you're Kirby Smart, he probably loves it too, because you're probably listen, there's a real chance that Georgia doesn't win the SEC championship game. You might have to go on the road on that first game, right? One of those first round of playoffs, those are at the school. Like the schools are hosting those. So this is going to be a legit true road environment at those stadiums. And you got to get used to playing in the road. And what better way to go to Bryant Denny, with a new coaching staff, new energy around that program, and Texas at DKR, which is going to be mobbing that day, and even the Grove at Ole Miss too. I love it. I think this is great test for Georgia, but they'll go 11-1, 12-0.
Let's
Can,
move
can I
on
ask real
over.
quick?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. What before we move on to Georgia, what goes wrong if they hit the under? Like, how does Georgia hit the under? Is it aside from just drastic injuries? Is it wide receiver room just struggles with drops? Is it, you know, I don't again, like I don't know how. Like I think it's
Uh,
not to put it on the spot here, but
Here's what it is. Carson Beck gets hurt. Gunnar Stockton gets hurt. Jaden Rashada also gets hurt. Right, which is possible. We've seen quarterback rooms get decimated. Believe me, I know. I've seen quarterback rooms get decimated by injuries. but I just have a feeling that it's just not now. Okay, what's for this
Like
team to not?
you could lose by 3 points to Alabama, 1 point to Texas, 2 points to
Yeah,
Ole
yeah.
Miss. You
For
know,
them to lose, like I don't know if Gunnar Stockton is winning them 11 games. I don't know about that. I think Carson Beck does. But if you're talking about a catastrophic season, like a season where like if they don't win double digit games, it'll be because Carson Beck gets hurt. That'll be why.
okay.
And I can't
I
see
think there's
I can't
yeah.
see any other reason. Literally none.
The floor is so high on this team, and the ceiling is
It's
even just so. Yeah,
yeah.
it's well done, Kirby. Well done, Kirby Smart.